In the 50 years since the General Assembly created the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency to provide housing funds at below-market interest rates for low-income homebuyers, the agency has expanded its reach beyond homebuyers to include families and seniors seeking rental homes, homeowners needing rehab help or foreclosure prevention assistance to stay in their homes, and people with special housing needs. In that time, the agency has grown into an affordable housing juggernaut, financing more than 310,000 homes and apartments in North Carolina, valued at nearly $32 billion.
Idea for the agency originated with the North Carolina Home Builders Association. General counsel was Travis Porter, who was my law partner for 37 years, and I was his partner then. And John Crosland in Charlotte was the president of the North Carolina Home Builders Association. Those two were really responsible for initiating the idea of a housing finance agency in North Carolina. The agency has had a huge, huge impact on affordable housing in the state of North Carolina.
The agency has offered various mortgage programs, from mortgage credit certificates and the early first home mortgage to today's NC Home Advantage mortgage suite of products. Strong partnerships with lenders and real estate agents have resulted in more than $6 billion in home buyer loans. Investments in community home buying programs provided other avenues for home buyers and served as the foundation for today's self-help loan pool and community partners loan pool that enable local government and nonprofit partners to expand housing opportunities in their communities. The agency's 20-plus year partnership with Advance Energy has helped to keep these homes affordable through the nationally recognized System Vision. Altogether, the agency has helped nearly 140,000 North Carolinians become homeowners.
Hear a lot in the last 10 or 15 years about this notion of public-private partnerships. North Carolina Housing Finance Agency was doing public-private partnerships from the very inception because it was created to go out to issue the bonds and not to make the financing directly available to single-family homeowners or to residential real estate developers necessarily, but to work cooperatively with the financial institutions who would make those loans. And in fact, its bonds have always either had one or been the first or the second highest ratings category you can get from the rating agencies. So what we were able to do is to issue the bonds, structure a program that provides that mortgage financing, whether it's single family or multifamily, very secure, then take the mortgage payments to make the bond payments. The bond financing is what makes the agency, certainly on the single family, to a lesser extent on the multifamily, it's what has made the agency's programs work, and they work very successfully, I'm sure.
While the agency issued its first multifamily bond in 1980, it was the launch of the low-income housing tax credit 7 years later, but had a far-reaching impact as an affordable housing creator and economic driver. Keeping rents affordable for residents at 80% of their area median income, the housing credit has been used to develop new affordable homes, rehabilitate and preserve aging properties, and revitalize public housing. In 1992, the agency's rental production program deepened income targeting to families earning 60% or less of the area median income. The General Assembly's creation of the state tax credit in 1999 then expanded the housing credit's effectiveness for 15 years until it was replaced by the Workforce Housing Loan Program, a financing tool that encourages development in low and moderate income counties. When the pandemic hit, an historic $190 million appropriation to the Workforce Housing Loan Program addressed the resulting funding gaps for workforce housing developments that were stalled due to increased labor and materials costs. It wasn't the first time the agency successfully deployed rental investments in the aftermath of a national crisis. Its use of the Tax Credit Assistance Program and exchange funds helped jumpstart stalled developments after the 2008 housing crisis. All told, the agency has financed more than 126,000 affordable apartment homes for working families, seniors, and people with disabilities.
In 1986, the housing credit was adopted by Congress as a part of a tax reform bill, and the Housing Trust Fund was adopted by the General Assembly as a means of addressing housing needs that weren't being addressed. So we were tasked with recruiting developers who wanted to participate in the program We also had to recruit investors because we needed more than one or two players in the market who were controlling pricing. We needed to coach lenders who were knowledgeable about construction and permanent financing, but they didn't know how to do it with this new model. And we had to train all the management companies in a new set of compliance standards. So it was an enormous amount of work by the staff to get the housing credit stood up. Of course, it's gone on to be wildly successful, and I think it's it's the biggest production program in the country's history, and certainly has done measurable good in North Carolina.
While the agency kicked off rehab and repair efforts in 1983 with the Home Improvement Loans Bond Program, the major catalyst was the 1987 creation of the North Carolina Housing Trust Fund by the General Assembly. Over the years, the agency-administered Housing Trust Fund has become the state's largest financing source for emergency repairs and accessibility modifications. 1994's Single-Family Rehabilitation Program, which financed major repairs for low-income homeowners who are elderly or have disabilities, evolved over time into today's essential single-family rehabilitation loan pool, which enables the agency to efficiently target funding to areas with great need. Also launched in 1994, the award-winning Urgent Repair Program finances emergency home repairs for lower-income elderly homeowners and those with disabilities, and has been linked to healthcare cost savings. Thanks to these investments, more than 25,200 North Carolinians have been able to remain in their homes, in many cases avoiding costly institutional care.
We had a whole new set of rules and regulations, some of which came by statute. We had a new oversight board, the Housing Partnership, which thankfully was able to help us with the implementation of the program because many of the people were knowledgeable in what was possible through their agencies.
When we started the Housing Partnership, the idea was to make it a part of the Housing Finance Agency, but with a little independence, so that they could set that the partnership could set some of those rules, like the rules about making sure you go to the far east and the far west, and that you deal with the lower incomes. The Housing Finance Agency is one of those things that people don't realize they have, that the resource they have that is so remarkable, that can move fast, can deal with hurricanes, can deal with people who want to buy a house, or somebody who needs a new kitchen. That's a resource that I hope that the state continues to recognize as being that. But what keeps you motivated is going to see a development that has been successful, and talking to people about what it means to them, what it means to live in a really nice apartment in a nice area, what it means to have their house fixed up, what it means to own a house that they didn't think they could own at all. They thought they'd never own.
Also made possible by the Housing Trust Fund, the Supportive Housing Development Program commenced in 1994 to increase the supply of emergency, transitional, and permanent supportive housing for low-income households and individuals with special needs. This small program has sparked meaningful outcomes over the years, financing more than 6,200 units for people experiencing homelessness, people with mental, physical, or developmental disabilities, and survivors of domestic violence, among others. With need intensified by the pandemic, the agency built on this foundation by rolling out the Supportive Housing American Rescue Plan in 2023 to finance housing for people experiencing homelessness, those at risk of becoming homeless, and other vulnerable populations. The agency also worked to provide affordable housing for people with disabilities through its partnership with the NC Department of Health and Human Services on the nationally recognized Targeting Program, a set-aside of units in low-income housing tax credit properties, affordable to people with disabilities living on a fixed income, and the KEY Program, a state-appropriated rent subsidy for those units. In 2016, the agency again collaborated with NC Department of Health and Human Services to administer the Transitions to Community Living Voucher that provides rent assistance to assist people with behavioral health disabilities to either be diverted from or transition out of restrictive settings to live in the community of their choice. These rental assistance programs have helped more than 11,400 North Carolinians.
Affordable housing is an investment. It's not an expense. And I think if our legislators and congressmen and senators can understand that, it is an investment, not an expense. And because providing adequate housing for families does pay off without a doubt. And we need to continue to invest in housing.
The agency has often been called upon in times of natural disaster or economic crisis. Hurricane Floyd required the agency to deploy both federal and state resources in 2000 to meet the resulting housing needs in affected counties. After Hurricane Matthew struck in 2016, the agency was again there, deploying a disaster-focused offshoot of its essential single-family rehabilitation loan pool to help in recovery efforts. More recently, the agency collaborated with NC Department of Health and Human Services and the NC Coalition to End Homelessness in response to Hurricane Florence to develop Back at Home, a rapid rehousing program that was later redeployed in response to the pandemic. Economic downturns also required the agency's expertise on several foreclosure prevention programs, from the 2005 Home Protection Program sparked by job losses, to the NC Foreclosure Prevention Fund born out of the Great Recession, to the more recent NC Homeowner Assistance Fund in the pandemic's wake. The agency also took over the State Home Foreclosure Prevention Program in 2011. All these efforts have helped more than 67,000 North Carolinians hold on to their homes during difficult times. None of the agency's work over the past 50 years could have happened without its strong network of statewide partners.
The agency's success over the past 50 years has really relied on recruiting and retaining a talented group of staff members, having a visionary board chairman, having engaged and knowledgeable board members and members of the housing partnership. And we've been blessed to have those. But I would also argue having an engaged network of partners statewide has been indispensable. Our network of partners has not just been a good thing or a luxury, but it's been completely indispensable. And my hat's off to all the people that have played a role over the last 50 years and will play a role over the next 50 years.
The objectives are the same between our association and the agency. Obviously, the way in which in the real estate industry is we do something that is critical. There are lots of things in the world that people like or want, but there's only a few things that are critical, and one of them is shelter. And we have to provide shelter for our citizens and the folks who want to make North Carolina home. And it's a challenge because a lot of the particularly entry-level housing is becoming almost impossible for young people to afford. One of the obviously that is a goal of the Housing Finance Agency in providing so many of your programs for down payment assistance to everything else that you do is designed to get folks into housing, and it's critical for us. Not only is it important for the good of society, because when folks are in homes, they're better citizens. The outcomes are better. The students are more successful in their studies. Home ownership is just a critical foundation of the middle class in this country. The wealth of the middle class is in the equity that they build in their homes.
Housing is truly a local issue. The folks, the boots on the ground, are those that are working in the communities from the smallest towns to the largest cities and trying to fill the needs of their communities. The thing that we can do is help to manage the resources, help create those connections, and allow them to do the work that they do so well. Pandemic changed all of our lives in so many ways, and it changed our agency just from our business processes to how we work, where we work, and the work that we do. But the thing that remained constant through all of that was the outcomes of our programs. It's really heightened the importance of our work. The pandemic taught us all one thing, is that when it happened, they sent us all home. There was no more important place for us to have for ourselves than our homes. It was our shelter. It was our office. It was our school. It was the place we had our social aspects of our lives. We're all at home now. There was no place else for us to go. So I think it put that heightened importance on housing for all of us. And as part of that, we've seen since the pandemic that more folks are talking about housing. It's at the top of everybody's mind. We often talk about our agency as, a lot of folks come here for the job, but they stay here for the mission. And I think that is truly the backbone of why we are successful and why we have been successful for the last 50 years. It's about the programs, but the programs are about the people that work here, the people we serve, and the people we partner with. The most important legacy is the work, all of the work that we've done is still around. The first homeowners that we helped buy their house back in the early 70s, those houses are still around. They're still on the ground. Somebody is still living there. So it wasn't just the first family that we impacted. It was all the families past that were impacted. It's that first rental development that we did. Those units are still on the ground serving residents in those communities. It's the thousands of families that came after them. We think about the first time, but housing is really one of those resources that's an ongoing, living, breathing organism that continues to serve long after that first use. I think that's also why our programs work so well and why our work really is economic development and why it is such a key to the foundation for communities is it's long-standing, it's long-lasting. It doesn't go away once you make that first investment. It's there for the long haul. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of is that we can drive around the state and we can see the impact that we had on those communities 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's still standing, it's still there, and it's still impacting new families for generations to come.
I'm Adam Nabram, the current chair of the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors. I think most of us want to feel we're part of a community. Community is kind of like an extended family. We rely on one another for company, for protection, for fun, and for our livelihoods. Housing is a key component of community. We don't always think about this, but in the U.S., virtually every housing unit is subsidized in one form or another. For some, the subsidy is a federal tax deduction on mortgage interest and local property taxes. Interest rates are kept low for many home buyers because mortgage loans are packaged into government guaranteed bonds, which lowers the cost of our mortgage payments. Affordable housing is simply a building block for a larger community that includes families headed by persons who aren't yet top earners in our communities. These families may be headed by delivery drivers, nurses, carpenters, teachers, public safety officers, or grocery workers. They may be retired persons or someone who is sick or injured and can't work so much. No matter their circumstance, they are by definition part of our community. And if they're not housed, the bonds that hold our community together are weakened. Weak communities are less safe, less productive, and less enjoyable for us to live in. For 50 years, the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, with broad support from every element of our state's leadership and citizenry, has financed over 330,000 homes and apartments all across North Carolina. Together, we've built stronger, happier, more productive communities all across our great state. It's wonderful to think what North Carolinians have come together to build. We should all be proud that for half a century, North Carolinians have united in community to make our state more prosperous, safer for everyone, and more productive. And there's a lot of joy in it. And if you were to come into our staff and board, you'd find that people are pretty happy working together for this tremendous cause.